Today, we're digging into a moment that absolutely shook the British Empire to its core, the 1857 uprising in India. It's a gripping story full of soldiers and kings, whispers and rumors, and just sheer rage. So let's get right into it and unpack how this all went down.
So picture this. It's May 10th, 1857, in the city of Meerut. The Indian soldiers in the British East India Company's army, they were called sepoys, suddenly turn on their own officers.
But this wasn't just some isolated incident. Oh no, the anger spread like wildfire. What began as a mutiny among soldiers quickly became a full-blown rebellion, pulling in towns and villages and nearly bringing British rule to its knees.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How does a protest by soldiers spiral into a massive, widespread revolution? Was this some grand plan, or just a spontaneous chain reaction? That's what we're going to explore. Okay, first things first, let's trace those critical first hours of the revolt. We'll follow the trail from that initial spark in Meerut all the way to Delhi, which was really the historic heart of imperial power in India. I mean, just look at how fast everything happened. The sepoys don't just stay put in Meerut, they have a plan. They ride almost 40 miles through the night, straight for Delhi, the old capital of the Mughal Empire. And their target? The Red Fort. That's where they find this man, Bahadur Shah, the old and, frankly, powerless Mughal emperor. See, they weren't just looking for a place to hide, they were looking for a leader, for someone who could give their cause a sense of legitimacy. And this is what they told him. This right here is the heart of their grievance. The new rifle cartridges, they said, were greased with cow and pig fat. For Hindus, the cow is sacred. For Muslims, the pig is unclean. This was a direct assault on their faith, something that cut so deep it managed to unite both groups against the British. Now, Bahadur Shah was hesitant, to say the least. But what could he do? He had an entire army of rebel soldiers in his court. So he gave them his blessing. And in that moment, everything changed. This was no longer just a mutiny. It was a full-fledged rebellion, with the symbolic authority of the Mughal emperor right behind it. All right, so the greased cartridges, that was the spark. But a spark only starts a fire if there's plenty of dry fuel around. And let me tell you, the atmosphere in India was soaked in it. Let's look at this potent mix of rumor, prophecy, and just deep-seated fear that was simmering just below the surface. And we're not just talking about the cartridges. The air was thick with rumors. There was talk that the British were mixing bone dust from cows and pigs into the flour sold at the market. There were prophecies flying around that British rule would end exactly 100 years after a famous battle. And then there was this really strange thing, these flatbreads, chapatis, being passed from village to village with no explanation. It was seen as some kind of omen. So where did this specific cartridge rumor even start? Well, one story goes that it all began with a taunt. A low-caste worker at an armory basically told a high-caste sepoy, hey, your precious caste status is about to be gone once you have to bite these new cartridges. That insult just hit a nerve, tapping into all these anxieties about identity, religion, and social standing. But the real question is, why did people believe this stuff so easily? Well, it's because it fit a pattern. For decades, the British had been aggressively changing Indian society. They were banning customs, taking over kingdoms, imposing their own laws. For a lot of people, these rumors just felt like the final undeniable proof of a larger conspiracy to destroy their culture and convert them all to Christianity. And if you really want to understand that deep-seated fear, there is no better example than the Kingdom of Awadh. What the British did there just a year earlier created the perfect tinderbox, just waiting for a spark. So in 1856, the British just straight up annexed Awadh, a huge and wealthy state right in the heart of North India. They kicked out the Nawab, their ruler, saying he wasn't governing properly. But the thing is, the Nawab wasn't some hated tyrant. He was beloved by his people. His exile was felt as a deep, personal humiliation for everyone. This quote here really captures that feeling of devastation, like the soul had been ripped out of their world. And if the emotional blow wasn't enough, the economic one was just brutal. The British brought in a new land revenue system that went after the local landlords, called the tulukdars. And this chart shows you exactly what happened. Before 1856, they controlled about 2/3 of the villages. After, just over 1/3. Their power and wealth were just shattered, overnight.
So you see what's happening here? You've got a ruler who's been deposed, you've got landlords who've been dispossessed, you've got peasants getting crushed by insane tax hikes. And here's the kicker. A huge number of the sepoys in the British Army actually came from these villages in Oth. The British had managed to anger literally everyone, all at the same time.
Okay, so now we know why the rebellion spread so far and so fast. But what about the how? I mean, how did they coordinate all of this? Let's take a look at the actual mechanics of the uprising. It's fascinating, really. When you look at how these mutinies unfolded, you see this pattern emerging, repeated from one town to the next. It wasn't just chaos, it was almost like a playbook. First, a signal. Then, you seize the weapons. You take the money. Then you systematically destroy all the symbols of British power, jails, post offices, court records, and finally, you call on everyone, Hindus and Muslims, to rise up together.
And all of this strongly suggests that this wasn't random chance. There's evidence of messengers carrying letters between different army garrisons. We know the sepoys were holding these nightly councils, called panchayats, to plan and make decisions together. They were very much in control of their own rebellion.
Okay, for our final piece of the puzzle, a rebellion on this scale needs leaders. And what's really interesting is the incredibly diverse group of people who stepped up to lead the fight. Of course, you had the famous figures, the deposed royalty who had their own grievances with the British, people like Nana Sahib in Kanpur and the legendary Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Often, they were pushed into leading by popular demand. But that's just scratching the surface. Look at this list. It was an incredible coalition. You had local landlords like Kunwar Singh. You had grassroots organizers like a man named Shah, who rallied 84 villages. You had charismatic religious figures like Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah, and you even had tribal leaders like Gonu. This wasn't just a military thing. This was truly a people's uprising. In the end, as we know, the rebellion was crushed. But it was born from this incredibly complex mix of religious fear, political anger, and economic hardship. And even in failure, it changed everything. It proved that British rule wasn't invincible, and it completely altered the relationship between Britain and India, leaving a legacy that we can still feel today.